Anyway, Tortos. We tried separate ways of tanking this. We tried at one point having me on the ads and our monk on the boss, and then vice versa. In the end, it just worked better with me on the boss and him on the ads for just, I mean, it just seems obvious to me, but it was worth trying regardless. We have to be careful here when you're tanking. The boss is his snapping bite. That's really it, technically. As long as you have your active mitigation up for the snapping bite, you shouldn't usually be losing your shield. And having your shield up pretty much 100% of the fight is like face roll mode for the tank on Tortos. Just make sure you don't get hit by shit from the ceiling, which I'm sure I do a couple times in this fight, because it's like a nightmare. As you can see, everything's like AoE and everywhere and whatever. But the key times that you need to pop your SOTR or whatever active mitigation you have is snapping bite and ground slam, obviously. Sometimes he'll do a ground slam and a snapping right after, so you need to have some kind of coverage for that. Otherwise, you will lose your shield, and you don't want to be losing your shield, because when you lose your shield, if you get hit by something and then get a shield by accident right away, you'll be at like 10% and can't get healed. It's happened to me before. It's just the way it is. So make sure your shield's up. You can even bomb wog your, like, a nice little trick as a paladin is oftentimes you'll have 5 stacks of Bastion of Glory. So what you can do if you lose your shield is just put up a 3 holy power and then like judge one of the crystals to get your shield, and then just bomb wog yourself and it'll give you pretty much a full shield. So just things to consider. This fight is really straightforward, frankly. Three turtle shells come out. The biggest check in terms of turtle DPS is the first ones that come out. You need to get one turtle dead prior to the boss reaching 100 energy, or else he will pulse the whole raid and kill you. So you just have somebody mark one of the turtles with a skull and kill it, and that's it. And then kick it, assign a couple people that can kick in case one of the like if the primary person that's supposed to kick is unable to, well, kick for whatever reason, you should have backups. Other than that, we generally had ranged and daughters, and make sure slows are on the whirling turtles, while the melee were on the bats, including the 2 tanks. As you can see, I usually go over to the bats and drop my lights hammer and shit like that. Prism's another good option for this fight, but you just want to get some AoE on the bats. The faster those bats die, the better, and there's quite a lot of them. The annoying thing is you can only get a prism every other bat wave because they're 45 seconds, and you can only get a hammer every other wave because it's a 1 minute CD and bat spawn every 45 seconds, but it's okay. As the off tank in this fight, we had our monk doing it. It's very, very important that you have CDs when the bats come in, and that you're above, I think it's 550k HP when the bats come in. So you need to have CDs, you need to have your shield up, and you need to be above that amount of health, because if you're below that amount of health, yeah, as you can see, I'm just half health right now with my shield. If you're below 550 health, the bats hit harder, and they heal themselves. So you can really fuck yourself in a situation where the tank on the bats gets hit down to 300k health and then gets a shield, because the bats are just constantly going to be healing, and you can't heal a tank with a shield until he loses his shield. So you really need to make sure that when the tank gets the shield, he's above, or he's like max HP basically. Other than that, just AoE them down. Obviously, just clever use of what you're supposed to do. If the tank loses his shield, have somebody stun the ads or slow them so the tank can run away, get healed, get his new shield, and then come back and finish tanking the ads. Monks are retardedly overpowered for AoE damage, as you can see. Dot's damage in the bottom left is obscene right now. That's really the whole fight, and after a stomp, just make sure you're moving out of rockfall. As you can see, these blue circles on the ground. You get damage within 20 yards of the fall location, but it's only 100k. But if you're within the circle, which is like an 8-yard radius, I think, you get hit for 500k, which is your shield is gone at that point. So just make sure you get out of the blue circle, and if there's like 8 blue circles on top of each other, just try to run away from that, because that's still like 800k damage coming in. Other than that, in terms of the raid after a stomp, if you have personals, use it for a stomp, so you try not to lose your shield. But if a stomp depletes your shield, which it will for a lot of people because it hits for, I think, more than your health, the general, say, here's the stomp right now. Okay, so a ton of people just lost their shields. General rule of thumb, what you want to be doing is get topped to like 90% plus health, and then get your shield as a non-tank raider. Fuck, our off-tank. Yeah, see, our off-tank almost died there because he lost his shield and the bats were shitting on him. Somebody yellow H'd him, he got a shield and ran away. So yeah, so what you want to be doing as a raider, like I said, you get to 90% health, you pop a humming crystal, so you get your shield back, and then you get healed back to full. Just because you don't want to, as kind of with the tanks, you don't want to be in a situation where you're at like 20% health and then you max your shield, because there's a good chance that the next Quake will not only deplete your shield, but have a good chance of killing you, especially if a rock falls on top of you or something like that. That's just general raid logistics mentality kind of thing. Other than that, I mean, it is really a very simple fight. There's just a lot of shit going on, like a lot of nameplay, it's a lot of AoE, a lot of numbers. So you just kind of want to maximize output. As the tank on Tordos, you want to help with the ads as much as you can. You still have a decent amount of Vengeance, 150, 160k. The tank that's on the bats obviously wants to bring them to Tortoise's leg or mouth or something so you can cleave onto the boss. If you can Pestilence Turtles that are nearby as a DK, do it. Or dot them, or AoE them as they're coming by. You know, do it. Helps a lot. And that's it. Unfortunately, I don't have many other tips to share on this fight. It's generally pretty straightforward. Range kill turtles, melee kill bats and cleave bats, and then everybody cleave onto the boss as much as possible. Dot the boss, single target the boss. AM snapping bites, AM quakes, and CD for bats. That's the whole fight, and you just do it for a long time. At a certain percentage of health, you basically want to stop dealing with ads and just burn the boss. That's usually raid dependent. I think ours was about 20 or 25%. So you should just know when, like, what your DPS is comfortable at, and then, you know, call a let's stop killing ads kind of thing and finish the boss off, especially if you're in trouble for Berserk. You're supposed to be doing, he has 1 billion health, so you need to be doing 100 million or 10% of his health every minute, because you have 10-minute Berserk. I mean, that's just in an ideal world, but that doesn't take it. Yeah, see, I'm a baddie there, and I just got hit by Rockfall. As I said, you need to move out of those, because one Rockfall will deplete your, it'll deplete your shield, and then a Snapping Bite comes right after and kills you. So I had that kind of combo there while I was trying to selfishly AoE the bats. So just be careful with sitting in circles. As you just saw, I died quite quickly doing that. Luckily I was res quickly and got back to the fight, and we killed the boss. At least I hope this is the kill video. I'm pretty sure it is. So that's it for this fight. Call DPS early. One other thing to mention is, and I just thought of this and now I just forgot again. Well, if I remember it, I'll say it towards the end. This is really annoying. Get out of circle, Sloot. That's really about it for this fight, and I'm sure whatever I was going to mention was in the... Oh yeah, actually what I was going to mention is, if you're struggling with DPS, part of the mechanics of the fight lend itself to good play in terms of increasing DPS on the boss and on the bats. The turtles that you kick through to interrupt the boss's cast, like that one you just saw whirling through the middle of the screen, increase damage taken on the targets they hit by 15% for, I think, 20 seconds, something like that. So the boss not only gets his shit interrupted, but he also takes increased damage for 20 seconds. So obviously you see where I'm going with this. The idea is to, you can actually even stack bats in front of the boss, kick a shell through all of them, and then everything takes increased damage for 20 seconds. Once you get enough turtles up at the end, the idea is to just chain, like every 20 seconds, kick a turtle, so that the boss constantly has a damage debuff on him, and you know, you kill him as a result faster. Which is kind of what we're doing here. We're just kicking turtles through him. We've called stop DPS on ads, and everyone's just burning the boss as hard as they can. Wow, I never re-elixired. I never ever missed that. Anyway, and that's it. And then the boss falls over eventually, and that's the end of the story. The bats at the end that you don't DPS anymore, they're slowable, they're stunnable, so they're very easily kitable. Tank just needs to get threat and run away. And that's it for the fight. It's a pretty basic fight. There's just, like I said, 8 times already, a lot of shit going on, and you just need to not be bad and move out of stuff, like I wasn't on that fight. That's it. Next up is Megara, with a lot of annoying trash, which obviously I didn't record and put in here. Oh man, this chair. God, I hate this chair. So I'll just wait to look at all the loot. I remember why I left the loot in here. Is it because, I don't know, people like to look at loot, so I suppose I just left it in here so you guys can see what dropped on these kills. Oh, so interesting, Sloot. Look at all that loot. Oh, yes, yes. Yeah, Spirit Plate. Okay, for Megara, the big difference on Heroic, which you'll see momentarily, there it is. The big difference on Heroic is that there is an extra head color in this fight. So there's a purple head now, an arcane head. The tactic we use here, which we used on normal too, and pretty much all the other guilds used, is you just ignore a color of head, and you need to kill 7 heads to kill the boss, okay? So we decided to ignore the green one because we deem that by far that one is the nastiest. So we kill blue, red, purple, and then a third blue, and then that's the end of the boss. It dies after that. By leaving the green head up the whole time, every time you kill a head, the green head attacks, I think, 20% faster. So by the end, it's going to be hitting the tank pretty fucking hard, as you'll see a bit later. Megara 101, obviously, face the heads away when they're breathing, otherwise they'll die on the raid. If you get the fire debuff, don't be in melee, run it the fuck out. If you get the frost debuff, run it over the fire, or especially not into the melee or in the middle of the room, because they won't have room by the end of the fight, and they grow. The arcane adds that spawn. Decide how you want to tank them. Either way is fine. You can MD them to your tanks, you can have a ranged tank them, you can have an AoE grip on them, you can do whatever you want to them. And it'll be fine. They don't have a lot of health, they're stunnable, they're slowable, they're whateverable, but they do stun people in the raid, so it is ideal to have them grouped up and then have like a boomkin AoE silence them, or beam them, whatever you want to call it, and you know, go from that. You also need to figure out how you want to stagger your cooldowns on the raid. It's technically about a 9-10 minute fight, so you deem what's best in terms of using your 3-minute, your 5-minute, and your heroism. There are certain head phases that are harder than others, only because more arcane ads spawn and there's more shit on the ground. So you guys have to, as a raid, decide, you know, what your hurdle is, and then use your cooldowns accordingly. As far as tanking goes, we only did 1 head swap as tanks in the entire fight, and that is the second time you kill a blue with the green next to it. That is the only time we did a tank swap. We didn't really need it otherwise. We could handle the damage, we could handle the breaths. Depending on what class you are, just make sure you have a rotation for the breaths, and make sure you have some kind of physical or active mitigation up between breaths, which are about like 15 seconds, something like that. Because they do hit fairly hard, especially as the fight goes on. Every time you kill a head, they do 10% more damage of that color. So what's going on here is I tanked red, so I'm going to go tank green because our other tank was just tanking green. You can't tank 2 greens in a row because you have the stacking debuff, so you got to swap off every time. So now this green already has 2 stacks of attack speed because we've killed 2 heads, a blue and a red. So you just want to make sure you chain CDs here. I used Unglyph DP for the first breath. I should be getting my AM up right now. Okay, my AM wasn't ready, so I decided to use my Guardian. My Guardian also counts for the breath, and now I have 5 Holy Power waiting for when my Guardian is done, which I used there because I was starting to overflow with Holy Power. So AM's up again. For the next breath, I think I'm probably going to use my Bark Skin for my Symbiosis, because obviously AM does nothing for, yep, there it is. I call for an IB2 because Bark Skin's only 10% damage reduction. I eat that breath. You can't see it because my camera's there, but I look at the health of the other head, and it should be dying very soon. Should be dying soon. There it is, so it's dead, so I have a cooldown for all 3 breaths. And then here, we want to burn the blue head as much as possible. This is also where we do a tank swap, because if you reach 4 stacks of frozen breath, you get frozen for like 15 seconds. You can't trinket it, you can't bubble it, you can't do anything. So this is the only time we did a tank swap, but it's also to what it helps do, because there's an odd number of heads that you kill. What it helps do is it allows the tanks to always tank the same color of head going down the line and never switch. And we just found it easier that way. You learn how to deal with your head and your debuff and whatever. So I usually take 1 or 2 stacks of the frozen here. So there's the first one, Unglyph DP it like last time. AM between. AM, DP, DP, Divine Purpose. I chose Divine Purpose again, obviously, because you have like 100% tanking up time on the heads. Then I use my Bark Skin there, take another breath, and then we do a swap. Pro tip rather here, even though you're tanking the green head, it's the blue one that needs to die. There's no danger between breaths, so you can keep DPSing the blue one, and now I move out because there's a breath coming. As soon as that breath is done, I can move right back in and help DPS the blue head, which is very welcome. See, right back, DPSing the blue head. There's no frontal during no breath, so it doesn't matter if I'm pointing it at the raid. Plus, nobody should be DPSing the green head anyway. After that's all said and done, red head is next, which is the one that I'm on, like I was in the first rotation too. The dot from the red head is pretty nasty, especially with the increased damage later. So make sure that paladins have purity. I would suggest not having purity if you're tanking, because the unbreakable spirit is actually quite useful because it allows you to get 2 DPs in on a 4. Well, it allows you to get more DPs in per fight and mitigate more breaths, especially if there's a 4 breath head, which I think this one might be, I actually can't remember. Either way, there are times when there's a 4 breath head and then you don't have your DP up for the 4th breath, or sometimes you don't have your DP up for the 1st breath of the next head. So UB is actually quite useful here over purity, especially because purity doesn't mitigate the actual breath dots themselves. See, I called for a PS there, I always have a cooldown for breaths. Purity doesn't mitigate the actual breath hits. It just mitigates only the dot. See, I just called for purity, that little cross down there. It only mitigates the dot from the red ad, because the other debuffs aren't dots. So it's good to chain some purities while you're tanking the red head and after you're done tanking the red head too. Other than that, UB is better, so don't take purity. My recommendation at least is don't take purity for this fight as prot. But, you know, I'm sure some people have and will argue against me saying that, but that's okay. It worked for us, and whatever works for you, works for you. The other recommendation, obviously, if it goes without saying, is take Light's Hammer for this fight. There's a massive amount of healing needed between Rampage phases, and Light's Hammer with High Vengeance equals a lot of healing. My healing meter only goes to 5, but I'm like 6th on healing at like 60k HPS, which is pretty high for this fight. So this is our second last head. They're dealing with the arcane head over there. So I'm back to the now at 5 stacks green head, which hits pretty fucking hard. So there's my DP again on Glyphed for the first breath. And now I'm going to chain my AM between breath phases. With the next breath coming, I'm either probably going to use my AD or my Guardian. I forget which one I use to mitigate the breath. Okay, actually I used IB with Bark Skin, that's fine. And then I pop my AM again, make sure I'm mitigating his physical hits. And then once that wears off, I'm probably going to pop either my AD or my Guardian. Except I keep proccing Divine Purpose because I fucking love that talent. And don't need to use my Guardian, but I do anyway for my breath because obviously my Shield to the Righteous doesn't mitigate breath damage. So now I have a pretty good coverage. I'm just hanging back. 4 seconds left on Guardian, 3 on AM. I still have my DP for the 4th breath if needed, along with my AD, which I pop all of right here for the Rod Armor. See, so there you go. I wouldn't have been able to pop that 2nd DP for that 4th breath if I didn't have Spirit. So he's dead here. So now we just have to kill the blue head, and we win the fight. So this is a use everything you have left situation. My Aura Mastery just came up. My Light's Hammer just came up. You should be able to Aura Mastery every head here. Every 3rd head, that is. It's about, you should have time for that. So everyone just DPSs a Frozen Head here. We don't even do a swap anymore because I'm not going to hit 4 stacks. Because that's where we Heroism as well. I know I'm only going to hit 3 stacks, so we don't even do a tank swap anymore, but the other tank is helping DPS this head, obviously, between breath phases. And that's it. You can't really see what's going on in the raid, obviously, from this angle, but essentially you just want to be dropping, aside from the fire debuffs right there, you want to be dropping your debuffs as far out of the raid as possible. Warlock portals are good for this, as are any kind of, you know, blink, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and you want to be negating debuffs as much as possible. So when there's fire shit down, you want to get rid of ice patches, and when ice beams are coming, you want to run through fire patches with them. And arcane ads you just need to deal with. They need to be AoE tanked and silenced, like I said. A final note about the arcane head. So they all have different breaths. The green breath increases damage taken, the red breath's a dot, the blue breath stuns you at 4. The arcane head puts a kind of MS debuff on the tank. And it's not actual healing loss. What it does is every percent that goes up on the tank ends up radiating healing to the rest of the raid. So there's little tricks you can do with that. I'm not going to say too much more, but there's little tricks you can do with that breath, having like maybe somebody else, like a healer or something, soak that breath to help with AoE healing during Rampage. Just little tips and tricks like that. So that's it for the boss. It's actually not too hard. It's just a lot of fucking healing throughput needed. That's really what it is, and tanks just need proper CD rotations as usual, like every other fight in this game that you're tanking. Heroic modes. Yep, that's it. So healing throughput, any way you can help with AoE healing helps. Any magical damage reduction you can do for breaths helps, and just DPS the fuck out of heads. That's it. Alright, Ji-Kun. This fight is a pain in the ass, and actually I don't think, like our Horde on kill, this isn't our first kill either. The Horde on kill is because I was getting DDoSed, so I didn't actually have the file of our initial kill because I was getting DDoSed. And this one, the file was corrupt, so I actually had to use this week's kill. But either way, the strats didn't change between the 2 weeks anyway, so it doesn't matter. Okay, on this fight, the pain in the ass is really knowing all of the nest orders and being able to plan around them, because there's no actual pattern to the nests, at least not too much of a pattern. And you need to know that every X nests, a nest guardian spawns, which is why I just jumped down on this nest. It needs to be tanked. It hits hard enough that it needs to be tanked. So we had a 4-group rotation, healer in each group, and we sent different groups to different platforms, obviously, as feather buffs allowed, and as tanks were needed. Every time a tank was needed, there was a person designated in each group that wouldn't go to that platform just for that time, and the tank would take their place, obviously for feather usage. So that time I jumped down with group, I think 3, and one of the people didn't come from group 3 in order to make sure everyone got a stack down there, or a feather stack. Up on the platform, all of the green pools in melee need to be soaked as much as possible. Every time you soak one, you sit in it for 3 seconds until you get a dot debuff on you, and then once that dot debuff wears off, it increases the amount of damage you take from soaking future pools by 25%. Now, like I said, that debuff doesn't apply until the dot stops. So if your dot has 2 seconds left on it, and you're soaking another pool, and then you refresh your dot, you won't get the debuff until, again, that dot wears off. So you can kind of reach a balance between soaking multiple pools before actually getting your debuff applied for the first time, but just don't soak so many that you die, because they do a lot of damage. As much as we can, we have the off-tank soaking pools, but they're not going to be able to soak the entire fight, so melee pools are also helped by, obviously, people who can soak it without getting shit on too hard. Oh, the screensaver just went up. There we go. In terms of tanking on this fight, you want to rotate ideally every 2 Talon Rake stacks. Talon Rake hits really fucking hard. If you don't have something up for it, you will die. At minimum, for the second stack, you need your AM. Like, I need my Shield of the Righteous, otherwise I probably will die. For the second stack especially, I also pop a miner, like DP or something. There are also times where it lines up because the tanks need to alternate platforms. When they need to go to kill the big ads, we alternate. So I went for the first one, and then my off-tank Dot went for the second one, the second big ad, that is. The third big ad, I'm going to go up. It'll be up at one of the higher nests, and so on and so on. Just because of how the debuffs line up, there are times, like I did there, when you have to take 3 Talon ranks, because it just helps you later in the fight, so one tank doesn't need to take 4 or something like that. You need to have your AM and a major for that. So you need to have like your AM and a shield wall. You need to have a major absorb on you with your active mitigation. You need to have, or you can AD cheese it. That works too. Okay, so now I'm going to the upper nest, like I said. The upper nests, unlike the lower nests, have eggs that spawn directly into matures. So those need to die, and there's only 3 of them. So the person that stayed behind here was actually the healer. So we have 4 DPS and myself, no healer. But I'm a paladin tank, lol, so I could just heal myself if needed, or just CD through everything. So the Nest Guardian dies, and then we need to jump down quickly before the quills. Quick note on the other abilities on the main platform. Obviously there's a downdraft. It's really fucking annoying, and if you don't have like basically 60% run speed for it, you cannot keep up with it. So having a Savage Roar or a Druid Roar every time a downdraft comes up is pretty ideal, just because you can, well, basically stay beside Ji-Kun the whole time. As a Paladin, I took Speed of Light, or whatever it's called, the first year talent. That is a 45-second sprint. You don't need you don't need Pursuit of Justice, which is what I use 95% of the time for this fight, because you're just kind of sitting there tanking the boss most of the time. And anytime you need to run to a platform, you should have your sprint up anyway. But it's really, really nice for the downdraft, which is coming momentarily. You'll see I'm going to use my sprint for it and stay within boss range pretty much the entire time, because it's just the way it lines up. Here's downdraft. Sprint is up. I can stay in melee range. The danger of not staying in melee range as a tank is that since the boss doesn't move from the middle, if you're halfway across the platform and the boss stops his downdraft and there's a melee, an unfortunate melee or something in range, they'll get meleeed. Or they'll get the Talon Rake or whatever. Either way, someone's going to die. So you need to make sure you sit in melee range if you're actively tanking the boss. Talon Rake. That's really it. Otherwise, for quills, just make sure you group up and heal. For Caw, make sure you move the fuck around and don't get hit, which people are bad at sometimes. Caw is just a little, like there's 3 of them, it just radiates out, shoots out to people's location, you just need to move. The only tricky part can be sometimes there's a Quills with a Caw right after, so the raid is grouped up healing, and then there's a Quills, or there's a Caw coming right after that, so if you don't spread, since it's AoE damage, it'll pulse the entire raid and kill everyone, because there's 3 of them. So you need to really watch timers and make sure that you move the fuck away from the back of the boss, or wherever you're grouping up to heal once a Caw is coming out after a Quills. That's really it, honestly. 2 to 3 Talon Rakes per tank. Make sure you CD every Talon Rake. Increasing CD usage is necessary as Talon Rake stacks go up. So the first one you can actually probably survive with a Minor. Second one needs active mitigation, and I would recommend a Minor and Absorb on top of that. And the third one needs a Major and your active mitigation minimum. Obviously anything else you can plant on top of that is good. Here is my next rotation for the big ad, which is annoyingly lines up with the downdraft. Luckily I have my sprint and I don't get knocked off. And then I happily jump down to my platform in order to kill the big ad, and I actually almost overshoot my platform. That's really close. That would have sucked, probably would have wiped us if I missed it. Another note, the big ads down here do like a basically 180-degree cleave, so you need to be facing them away from... You need to find the best spot to face them away. Like here I'm facing them away for the eggs, so everyone can DPS the eggs and the boss without getting cleaved. But sometimes you need to face them away from where you jump in, because some people will jump in behind the ad, and if you're facing it in the direction of the main platform, you're going to get them cleaved as they jump down. It's really just a judgment call. You just have to make sure people don't get cleaved, bottom line, when they jump down, or when they're down there DPSing. By the end of the fight, because of the stacking slime buff, debuff on you, you can only soak so many pools, so you're going to start slowly getting overrun with pools, as you can see. But as long as there's some areas in melee where there's still room to stack up and heal and then run away for Caw, it's not the end of the world. If I remember correctly, this kill is actually extremely sloppy, and we kill it with like 3 people alive, but either way, that's the whole gist of the fight. There are times also when there's obviously 1 nest up, when there's 2 nests up like on normal, but on Heroic there's also times when there's 3 nests up. So it's really just about group management, making sure you know which groups have what feathers and which groups can get new feathers and whatnot, and sending the right groups to the right platforms, which is something that you guys have to figure out via pulls and learning the fight and stuff like that. Yeah, not many more tricks or tips for tanking or anything really. Obviously I took Holy Avenger for this because it's it's a tank swap fight. You don't tank for a high uptime. Holy Avenger is also really good guaranteed coverage for the Talon Rake, which is really annoying because it's basically a cooldown ability the boss uses. She never actually uses it exactly when the cooldown expires. She can prioritize different abilities. Like for Quills, Caw, and Feed Young, and Talon Rake are all off cooldown. She uses whatever she feels like first. Usually she uses, like, you'll eventually learn the rotation anyway, but you just have to make sure that, like, sometimes she'll finish her Quills and 3 other things will be off cooldown. You'll be like, oh, okay, Talon Rake might be coming next, and then you'll use your Shield of the Righteous, and then it turns out it was actually Caw, and then you might not be able to get enough Holy Power until after the Caw to deal with Talon Rake, and you're going to die. So that's why Holy Avenger is also really good, because it just provides straight Shield of the Righteous coverage for the time that Talon Rake might be coming up. Ooh, my cat is angry. So that's it. I think this final Quills pretty much wipes half the raid, or whatever's remaining of the raid, but either way, sloppy kill, but we killed the boss. Yep, there it is. Okay, 7 people, 8 people alive, not the end of the world. That's it for the fight. Not too tough. It's really just about platform management. That's all. If you start having a lot of matures pop up and like, I'm just gonna pause this for 1 second. If you start having a lot of ads pop up and matures and stuff, that's going to be trouble. So you really need to get to the platforms and kill those eggs and stuff right away. And the last thing I can say for that is make sure you manage the buffs on players well, in terms of getting them the damage buff. It really helps with finishing the boss off faster. Okay, Durumu is up next. This fight we spent way too long on in terms of progression, and we also one-tanked it, which I don't think any other guild did at all for their kills, so might be world first one tank. I don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter. You can 2-tank it, you can 1-tank it. There's advantages to both. Obviously, with 1 tank, more DPS, more overall raid DPS output, but it's harder to do, obviously, because if your tank dies or the tank needs really good rotations and cooldowns and everything to stay alive, if your tank dies, it's going to be trouble, which is why I always have a soulstone on me. You can see it right there in the top corner. Either I'm going to play this, start getting into it. Pet my cat in the meantime, otherwise he's going to meow in the camera. So we opted to 1-tank it. So in terms of fight mechanics, like I said, I'm not going to go into the basics of fight mechanics for this boss, but the usual apply. If you have lingering gaze on you, you need to move out and drop the shit on the side. With drain life, you need to, essentially, you can set it up cleaner if you want, but essentially you have to gangbang the drain life and make sure nobody gets above 2 or 3 seconds so the boss doesn't heal for too much, since it's a really tight DPS check. And obviously move out of knockback, which you just saw, and then the last mechanic is the parasite buff that goes out on people. The longer you can delay the dispel, the better, so you don't spawn as many ads and they don't do as much damage. I'll talk a bit more about tanking on this fight, because tanking is, as a 1-tank, it's, I suppose, tougher, or, you really have to play really well. There's one thing I didn't do in this kill video that we did this week, and that's help soak a beam. If you can deal with the damage intake of soaking a beam on top of the boss who hits really fucking hard, along with his hard stare, then you're good to go. So do that, which is, like I just did it this past week. It's okay, at least for our raid. You need to... On this boss, you need to always, and I mean always, 100% of the time, have some kind of mitigation rolling on yourself, okay? Whether it's 20% or whether it's like Holy Event, or whether it's Shield of the Righteous or whatever it may be, you need to have some kind of mitigation. If you don't have anything coming up, you need to call for an external. Like, you need to, as perfectly as you can, chain cooldowns as much as you can. I'm sure there's parts in this fight, because we had been pulling this boss for about 20 hours straight, where I let it drop off for a second. But generally, I did a fairly decent job of chaining everything I needed. And if not, then I'd call for an external. Another note is his hard stare, which is separate of his melee timer, hits... Well, I mean, it's not separate from his melee timer, but it is a separate skill that hits harder than his melee. Needs to be actively mitigated. If you have a 20% damage reduction up for like 10 seconds and he's doing a hard stare at you, just use your Shield of the Righteous. You'll have enough time to build up HP for the next time he does, for when your DP wears off. But mitigating that hard stare is a really big deal. Luckily, Paladins are really good on this fight for pretty much everything they need for the tanking. The idea is that between every maze phase, which you see here, which I'll explain in more details the next maze phase, so I can finish my thought right now, what you want to be doing is, there's 11 hard stairs that go out per non-maze phase, okay? That means you can split it up however you want. You can, and by split it up I mean the whole key to 1-tanking this fight is that you can bop or bubble the debuff off, okay? So you can choose to do 6 and 5, you know, bubble after 6 and take the remaining 5. There's some pools where I did 7 or 8, just because the way my cooldowns lined up, I could take it no problem. You know, bubble off 8 and you only have to deal with 3 hard stair stacks towards the end when everyone's running around for walls and crap. You do what you want, but the most equal split is obviously 5 or 6 or 6 and 5, okay? It's just the easiest way to do it. Another note, and I can't stress this enough, is Divine Purpose on this fight was gold for me. I'm sure you can probably do it with HA too, but you have literally 100% tanking uptime on something that, if you have good RNG on, will absolutely just be unbelievably good. If you have bad RNG on it, which is like I've explained on my channel page, I don't know how many hundreds of times, if you had bad RNG on it, you have enough other cooldowns to survive until you can get your next holy powered, or until you can get your next SOTR up. The other thing to note is Sacred Shield's really good on this fight. I mean, Sacred Shield in general should always be up 100% of the time, but it's really important on this fight to, you know, get it up 100% of the time. I think right here, okay, I said 6 stacks. There are also times when you will get Lingering Gaze on you as the tank, as the only tank, and you can only run so far out, because if you get out of melee range of the boss, he's going to kill someone. Where I put mine to the left currently, as you can see it, just like halfway out of the platform, I just got Lingering Gaze there. The way the maze lines up, where I put mine at max melee range, it's never an issue in our maze, like ever, ever, ever. So you have 2 options if you get Lingering Gaze as the tank. Run it out max melee range, which is what I just did, or put it directly under the boss. Oftentimes where I'm tanking the boss, though, since I'm so far out, I don't have time to run perfectly to the center of the boss. So I don't. So that, what the fuck is this cat? So I don't. So that means that I just run it out to max melee range. It's never been a problem. But dropping it off between the two, like you know, halfway between where that pool is right there, that's going to kill the raid on a maze. So you got to be really careful. Other than that, I mean, the fight it's really tightly tuned. It's a lot of fun, actually, especially as a single tank. I don't know, I had a blast on this fight. When walls come up, run under the boss, use hammer, use consecration, help AoE. If a wall is really lacking DPS and, you know, the maze is coming, you need to just directly switch to that wall and help kill it. Line up High Vengeance by mid non-maze phases with your wings, and line it up with your trinket procs as well for max damage as a tank. As you can see, I'm doing a retarded amount of damage. This is a fight that really lends itself to haste builds with Divine Purpose, like I said. Not that you can't do it any other way, but it is particularly strong in this fight. During the maze phase, the trick is, and I'll comment on it again at the last maze phase, the trick is, once you decide which direction the maze is coming from, which you can do by seeing little purple lines in the direction you're supposed to start moving towards, once the maze starts and the beam's coming towards you, you need to, there's like a little cubby near the beam that indicates where the first safe spot of the maze is. And then the way it works after that is, like, if this is the first safe spot, then it just kind of moves in chunks of safe area. My best advice for the maze, honestly, is just be patient. Be patient. If you die to the beam, you just didn't see where to go fast enough, but like more often than not, people are so worried that the beam's going to hit them that they move early and they just get gibbed by the shit. So you just really need to be patient until you clearly see, and I think they hotfixed the graphics a bit this past week, until you can clearly see where the next maze opening is that's safe. I'll try to comment on it more when we do the last maze phase here in this kill vid. During the prism phase, which is right now, you need to quickly see where ads spawn. You need to not have the blue beam on top of the blue ad ever. Once the blue oh man, this bagel. Once this blue beam is placed, not on the ad, it doesn't move for the rest of the phase. The yellow beam you can't control, and you want to move as far away from yellow ads as possible so that when it starts it has the most amount of time to reach a yellow ad as possible. And the red beam, obviously, you want to position on top of a red ad right away, kill it, and then move quickly to the other 2 red ads and kill those. If a yellow ad spawns, you need to kill it, because if you don't kill it and the beam passes over it and then through it and away from it, as soon as it gets out of the beam, it'll pulse and hit the raid for like 500k and wipe everyone. And we had wipes to those a lot too. So you need to kill red ads, and if a yellow ad spawns, you need to kill it right away, because you cannot control how long the yellow ad stays in the yellow beam, because you don't control the yellow beam's movement. You only control its initial placement. There's a drain life in the corner. Like I said, we just gangbang it. There's a knockback, move away for it. Make sure you keep your CDs rolling as the tank, your mitigation. And then here's the final ice wall phase, DPS ice walls. I don't know if you can see it in the quality of this video, but soon enough you'll see. where the purple lines line up. Yeah, this one's to the right, so you can see like little purple crackles on the ground. Anyway, so it's once again a right movement. Well, this time let's pay particular attention to where the safe part of the maze is. So this time it is, see where like where the raid markers are is usually a good indication of where the right place to go is. Those people like usually never died for maze. That was one of them. And you just slowly move, be patient, slowly move to the new safe areas. You see, like they do open up, obviously. Make sure the ice walls die before you get to them, otherwise obviously you die. And that's it. There's raid damage that goes out during this phase, so it is a bit taxing on healers. Just make sure you have proper CD rotations if required. You know, obviously Devo Aura is really good here because everyone's clumped up and it's all magic damage, and so on and so on. Other tips during this phase, which you can see I did in the bottom right, is to switch or to seal swap, which is something that I wouldn't say is more advanced, but people forget to do. The boss isn't actively hitting me, so I seal swap to Truth, especially because I don't have battle healer for this fight, because we needed all the damage we can get, and, well, other reasons too. But anyway, and as soon as the boss started mailing me again, I went right back to SOI, and then this is our close-ass kill with 2 seconds left on Berserk, like on the actual Berserk cast, and that's it. The boss died. That's really it for this fight. Not much more to say, I suppose. Let me just pause it for a second. Is there more to say? I pretty much covered everything. All the little eyes, how to tank it, how to do the maze phase, how to do the prism phase. Like I said, if you guys have questions later about anything, just PM me if I didn't cover it in my video or wasn't very clear about something. I'll be happy to try and help where I can, okay? Wow, that is a good face I'm making where I just paused. Alright, let's go on to the last kill we've had recently, which is Primordius, which after doing Darumu, this is like a breath of fresh air. The big difference on Heroic here is that there's big black ads that spawn, yes, lol, black ads, that spawn from the pools every 30 seconds randomly. If they reach the boss, they will explode and wipe the raid. So you need to tank them separate at all times, thus making it a 2-tank fight. The black ads hit fairly hard. They put a stacking dot on you that increases your damage to the boss, which is the opposite of the dot the boss puts on the tank that increases damage to the ads. So you can see, nice little swap mechanic there. So there's the first black ad. You need to chain. I took DP for this fight again. I also took unglyphed DP. And then I took Execution, and I took Focused Glyph, obviously, because you don't want to be AoEing if you can help it with the little ads around the boss, and you want to pump as much damage on the boss as possible. This is a fight where the predominant damage that comes from the tank is actually the dot that the black ads put on you. So don't worry about min-maxing damage too much, because between that dot and the stat boosts that you get from soaking red pools, you really are pretty covered. So just focus on survival in terms of gearing and whatnot for this fight. It's very important, because like I said, black ads do hit fucking hard. The boss hits pretty fucking hard at the end, and there's a lot of extra damage going out. So the idea here is we swapped every 3 black ads, and went to the boss as a result. Trying, obviously, to never have more than 2 black ads on the tank at once. The only hard time to do that at the beginning is at the beginning of the fight, because I don't have the debuff from the boss, so I'm not doing extra damage to the ads yet, but it's okay. Once the 3rd ad comes out is when I tell the raid to fuck off, because I need red pools, because I need to be transformed into Sarok prior to taunting the boss, which I do now because I've had 3 black ads. I go over, taunt the boss, and then the off tank runs away and tanks the next 3 black ads. Timing is tight in that the 3rd black ad needs to die before the 4th spawn so you can get your taunt off. So, you know, just make sure that you call for the raid to DPS it. After that, heroism, pop all your shit and go nuts on the boss. Make sure you chain CDs if you can help it, or call for externals. The boss damage isn't too bad at the beginning, but obviously wraps up towards, not wraps up, rather ramps up towards the end of the fight because of his stacking buff. In terms of kiting and the reason we're moving the boss, we decided to use one hemisphere of the room to kite the boss around in kind of like a malformed figure 8, kind of. It's kind of hard for me to explain without drawing it on the blackboard on my Twitch thing, which I can just do live next time if somebody asks. But the idea is to kite it in a way that you start pooling all the purple pools that slowly move towards the boss in one area, and then they just slowly chase the boss, and you keep kiting them around in the same pattern the whole time. If a purple pool reaches the boss, it heals him for like 10% or something, so that's usually a wipe right there, so that can't happen. He has, also on Heroic, he can have 4 mutations up at once instead of 6, so you need to be able to deal with them as they come. For the caustic one, obviously make sure there's enough people to soak in that big green circle right here. Otherwise, you know, the tank will die and all that kind of stuff. The off-tank just finished dealing with his black ads. He just killed his 3rd one, so it's his turn to taunt off me. And I run out and grab the next black ad that spawns. There it is. So that's the first of 3 that I'm going to be tanking now. I ask for a Dispel because not only do I have a bad stack on me, but my Sarac's about to wear off anyway. So there's my Dispel. Okay, so, you know, back to basics now. I also have a 9 stack of the boss dot now, so I'm doing extra damage to the ads. It's helping me kill them and helping the raid kill them faster too. So that black ad's dead. I look at the timer, la 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 la. The reason I was looking directly at the boss when the timer ended is because the most dangerous thing that can happen, like right there, as you can see we almost just wiped, is to have a black ad spawn in a pool near the boss, in which case there's a responsibility for you as the off-tank currently to go get the black ad as quickly as possible and taunt it away from the boss, and there is a responsibility for the boss tank to move the boss the fuck away from the ad as quickly as possible. We almost wiped there, but we didn't because of what I just said. So this is the 2nd black ad, kill it as quickly as possible. Now that the 3rd black ad is coming, I did it a bit early here, but you only have a minute 30 of tanking uptime on the boss, so it's okay that I took my Sarac early. But ideally during the 3rd ad, which is right now, you want to be going to collect your little Sarac buff and whatnot. I was a bit early, either way. Once this ad dies, which you call for DPS to switch on, you switch back to the boss, because that's been 3 ads. With more gear and more balls and whatever, you can probably take 4 black ads, with just more damage on the tank, but it equals to more damage on the boss, so you just need to balance. You know, can your heroes keep you up through more? If they can, and you can CD it well and whatever, then go for 4 ads, a lot more damage on the boss. And the Sarac buff is 2 minutes, which lends itself for 4 black ads. That's in the ideal world, but 3 makes it just easier. As you can see, the purple pools are all pooled up nicely, like I said, and we're just kiting around them in our quasi-messed up figure 8 that we do. On the other side of the map that you can't see right now, we've designated a few multi-dotters in range to keep killing lanes of little ads, so that every time people need to refresh their Sarac buff, there's pools down, so they can go do it immediately and come back. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The black ads are now being tanked in the middle of the room, so everyone can access them while the boss is kited around the side. And that's being done by Lorene right now, or Dot the monk. See black ad spawned right beside the boss. I saw it, I ran the fuck away, and he needs to taunt it, which he does. That is easily a wipe right there if nobody realizes it. It is a bit hard to see sometimes too, especially if you're the tank in the middle of the room. Like, it's not always obvious where the black ad's spawning, so you really need to keep your eyes open. I don't know if in this video or not, but there were some attempts where I was like frantically panning my camera around looking for a black ad knowing it already spawned, because sometimes you can't miss it pretty easily. Now that the 3rd black ad has died, the tank is coming in to taunt off me, and this is a good point that we decided to stop DPSing ads and burn the boss down, because everybody has also just refreshed their buffs. So the rest of the fight is me just grabbing blacks in the middle and everyone nuking the fuck out of the boss. We do decide to, for some reason, kill another horror. I don't know why, but it doesn't matter. I do die at the end of the fight, like with like 1% on the boss, and that's where the whole argument of should we have killed the ad or not was, and I think we shouldn't have, because then we killed the boss before he killed me. It doesn't matter though, the boss died, that's what's important. The one thing I should have done better here at the end is gotten my Sarac buffs right away while tanking the ads. I only had 1 buff on me, that's stupid. It's just lost mitigation. Aside from that, make sure you're chaining CDs well at the end here. Like, Purity is really strong on this fight. Call for CDs, use your own CDs. Black ads hit hard, they're stacking a buff on you while everyone's trying to finish the boss off. And I think here's where I die pretty much, if I remember right. It's like 1% on the boss or something. Anyways, and that's it. That's the whole fight. It really is not too hard of a fight. It's just a lot of crazy shit going on at once, and but mechanically it's not a very hard fight. Just a lot of bright lights and dealing with proper tank swap mechanics. And yeah, that's it. Well, I guess I don't die here. Oh, no, I do. It's right now that I die. I know I die. I'm waiting for it. Come on. Anyway, yeah, that's it for this fight. And I'm dead. Okay. And then the boss dies. See, that was really sketchy. If the boss had 1% more there, like that black hat, if that reached him, it would have wiped at like 1%. That would have sucked ass. Anyways, that's it for the 8 bosses that we've killed. Pause it right here after the loot so you guys can see what we got. That's it for the 8 bosses we killed. I'll be updating this loop obviously as we go on and hopefully kill more this week. Pause this. There we go. So that's it, guys. Hopefully this little Sloot tutorial or Slootcast or whatever you want to call it helped you guys out. I'm sure there is, like I said, a lot that I omitted in terms of tips and tricks and what I did wrong and all this kind of stuff. So if you have questions about something in particular that I didn't really cover, feel free to PM me or ask me about it, or ask me why I didn't do something or why I took a certain glyph, and I'll be happy to answer you, or to admit I was wrong, or to argue with you that I was right, or whatever. You know, constructive feedback always welcome, in my opinion, on every account, or just comments. You know, always glad to help people out if they need. That's it. So that's it for the first 8 bosses, and I'll just be looping this video around. Hopefully you guys will get some good help out of it and be able to kill some heroic bosses. Alright guys, thanks a lot for watching, and yeah, good luck on your bosses, and see you in 2 seconds when this reloops. Alright guys, take it easy.